One April morning in rural Michigan, a mother of 5 vanished without a trace. Her final text, a single letter, K. Behind that haunting silence lay a story of control, betrayal, and murder hidden in plain sight for 3 long years. Lenoir County, Michigan, a quiet stretch of farmland where cornfields sway in the breeze and neighbors still wave as they pass by. Life here is simple, grounded in hard work and family. But in April 2021, that sense of safety shattered. Dee Ann Warner, a respected businesswoman and devoted mother of 5, vanished without a trace. One moment she was running her company and caring for her family. The next, she was gone. Her disappearance sent shockwaves through the small community. How could a woman so deeply rooted in her home, her business, and her children suddenly walk away? And if she didn't leave willingly, what dark forces were at play? The last known message she ever sent was chilling in its simplicity, a single letter, K. It was meant to be casual, but it has since haunted everyone who loved her. At first, whispers spread that she had left on her own. Others believed something sinister had happened. What followed was a 3-year nightmare of unanswered questions, mounting suspicions, and a family's relentless pursuit of truth. This is the story of Dee Ann Warner, a story of ambition, betrayal, and ultimately, justice delayed but not denied. To understand the tragedy, you first have to understand the woman. Dee Ann Warner, known as Ann to her friends, was the kind of person who lit up a room. Born and raised in Michigan, she carried a reputation for resilience and determination. Friends describe her as ambitious, yet kind-hearted, a woman who could balance running a trucking company while still making it home in time to cook dinner for her kids. As a mother of 5, Ann's life was busy, sometimes overwhelming, but always full of love. The type of mom who would go to war for her kids without hesitation. Ann was also a successful businesswoman. She owned Warner Trucking, a company that thrived in a state where the trucking industry generates over $13 billion. Behind her success, however, cracks were forming in her personal life. Ann was married to Dale Warner, a man who outwardly appeared supportive, but who, according to family and friends, became increasingly controlling. In the months leading up to her disappearance, Ann confided to loved ones that she was unhappy and fearful. Injuries on her body raised suspicions. She once chillingly remarked, "If anything happens to me, look at Dale." It was a statement no one wanted to believe, but in hindsight, it was a prophecy. April 24th, 2021, began like any other spring morning in Lenoir County. Ann had plans, responsibilities, and things she wanted to accomplish. But as the hours passed, small details started to unravel into a nightmare. At around 10 a.m., Ann sent her final text message, single letter, K. It seemed casual at the time, but it became the last known sign of life from her. That day, neighbors reported unusual activity around the Warner property. Some recalled seeing Dale acting strangely, while others noticed Ann's sudden absence. Family members grew worried when phone calls went unanswered. By evening, panic had set in. The following day, Ann was officially missing. Her children, who spoke to her daily, knew immediately that something was wrong. This wasn't like her. Ann was the heart of the family. She wouldn't just walk away, not from her kids, not from her business, not without a word. What disturbed everyone even more was Dale's reaction. He didn't report her missing. He didn't organize searches. He seemed oddly calm, almost indifferent, as if her absence didn't matter. Meanwhile, whispers spread about injuries. Ann had recently suffered bruises she couldn't explain, comments she made about fearing for her safety. Friends recalled her ominous warning, "If something happens to me, it's Dale." By the end of that week, suspicions were growing. Something terrible had happened. The only question was, where was Ann? As days turned into weeks, suspicion grew heavier around one man, Dale Warner. From the outside, Dale seemed like a hard-working family man, but behind closed doors, friends and relatives described him as controlling, manipulative, and increasingly abusive. Anne had confided that Dale monitored her every move, controlled finances, and belittled her independence. Investigators soon uncovered financial irregularities. Dale had been moving money, committing fraud, and attempting to control Anne's share of the business. Friends described moments of tension, explosive arguments, and Anne's growing fear. One family member revealed she had begun quietly documenting his behavior, almost as if she knew something could happen. Then came the inconsistencies. Dale's account of Anne's disappearance didn't add up. His alibis shifted. He contradicted himself. He downplayed her absence as if it were voluntary, claiming she just left. Dale insisted she had abandoned her family, but to those who knew Anne, that was unthinkable. A mother of 5 doesn't vanish willingly, leaving her children without a word. But for investigators and Anne's loved ones, suspicion was rapidly becoming certainty. At first, the police treated Anne's case like a missing persons report. There was no immediate evidence of foul play, and officials seemed reluctant to assume the worst. For the family, this lack of urgency was devastating. Every day felt like a year, and hope was slipping away. Frustrated, Anne's relatives turned to private investigators, collecting messages and digging into Dale's activities. Evidence slowly began to build. Dale's phone records showed suspicious gaps. Surveillance footage raised questions about his movements on the day Anne vanished. Deleted messages hinted at, how could a woman disappear so completely, especially in a community where farmland stretched wide but people knew each other's business? By late 2021, investigators had enough evidence to name Dale as the prime suspect. But without a body, prosecutors hesitated. The family was trapped in limbo, living with suspicion, but without closure, spreading awareness and keeping pressure on authorities. The emotional toll was immense. Imagine waking up every day, not knowing where your mother is, whether she's alive, whether justice will ever come. For Anne's children, life became a cycle of grief and determination. Their persistence, they knew she hadn't left willingly. They knew Dale's story was a lie, and eventually, their persistence paid off. In June 2024, after 3 agonizing years of uncertainty, the truth finally came out. Anne's body was discovered on the Warner property, hidden inside a manure tank. The revelation was horrifying. For 3 years, her remains had been concealed in plain sight, on the very land she had once worked so hard to build with her own hands. She had been there all along, beneath the surface, while her children, siblings, and neighbors searched across Lenox County, clinging to the hope of finding her alive. For investigators, the discovery was a grim breakthrough. The search that had stretched across fields, rivers, and rural backroads ended not miles away, but in the heart of the Warner farm. To those who knew her, it felt like a betrayal of the land itself and had poured her life into that farm, and in the end, it became her grave. She had been murdered. Signs of violence, combined with the deliberate concealment of her body, painted a clear picture of a calculated crime. This was not an accident, nor a sudden outburst. It was a methodical attempt to silence her forever. The arrest of Dale Warner followed swiftly. Charged with open murder, Michigan's most serious homicide offense, and evidence tampering, he was finally forced to face the justice system. For Anne's family, the news brought both relief and anguish. Relief, because after years of unanswered questions, the truth was undeniable. Anguish, because the reality of her fate was even more horrific than they had imagined. The idea that Anne's body had been so close, hidden among the daily rhythms of farm life, unsettled the entire community. It wasn't just a crime against a woman, it was a violation of trust, of family, of everything the community thought they knew. The image of Anne's body, discarded like waste, will forever haunt those who loved her. To her children, it was the cruelest reminder of the abuse she had tried to escape. After endless nights of uncertainty, the question of where was finally answered, and her family could begin the next chapter in their pursuit of justice. The discovery was shocking, and in its place came the undeniable truth. She had been there all along, waiting for justice with the recovery of Ann's body. The case against Dale Warner shifted dramatically. For months, investigators had built a circumstantial case. But without a body, prosecutors knew a conviction would be harder to secure. Dale was formally charged with open murder, Michigan's most serious homicide charge, allowing the jury to consider both first and second-degree murder. He also faced charges of tampering with evidence, reflecting his alleged attempts to conceal Ann's death. From the start, the defense worked to portray Dale as a man wrongfully accused. They claimed the evidence was circumstantial, that grief and anger had clouded the investigators' judgment, and that no clear direct link tied him to Ann's death. They highlighted Dale's financial struggles, his marital conflicts, and Ann's chilling warnings to her friends and family. Witnesses testified about Dale's controlling behavior, his quick temper, and the breakdown of trust in their marriage. Prosecutors argued that his lies and contradictions after Ann's disappearance were not the actions of an innocent husband, but of a man desperately covering his tracks. Ann's children. For them, the trial was not only about legal justice, it was about honoring their mother. But as a beloved mother whose life had been stolen, Michigan has seen a troubling rise in domestic violence-related homicides in recent years. The trial was set for 2025, promising months of emotional testimony, legal maneuvering, and painful reliving of events. For Ann's family and community, it was not just a legal proceeding, it was a fight for truth, accountability, and a measure of closure. Ann's story isn't just about one woman, it's about an epidemic hiding in plain sight. Domestic violence is one of the most common yet underreported crimes in America, and too often, look at Dale, are not unique. Research shows that nearly half of women killed by partners had already disclosed abuse or threats to friends, family, or authorities. These are not isolated incidents. They are warnings, so why are they ignored? Experts point to systemic failures. Police departments sometimes treat early reports of domestic abuse as family disputes rather than criminal threats. Prosecutors hesitate to pursue cases without physical evidence or a body. Communities, not only for her family, but for countless others who see themselves reflected in her story. Her death underscores the urgent need for reform. Law enforcement officers need better training to recognize red flags. Prosecutors need the tools and authority to move forward before it's too late. Communities must learn to listen and to believe survivors, even when the truth is uncomfortable. Ann's silence now speaks for every victim whose voice was ignored. Her story is not just a tragedy, it is a call to action, a reminder that when red flags are dismissed, silence can become deadly. From a single haunting text to the discovery of her body on her own land, the story of Dee Ann Warner is both heartbreaking and unforgettable. It is the story of a woman who gave everything to her family, her business, and her community, only to have her life stolen in the most brutal way. Ann was never just a victim. She was a mother of 5, a successful businesswoman, and a woman of remarkable strength. Her disappearance carved a wound into her family's life that will never fully heal. Yet, out of that pain came an unbreakable resolve. Her children and siblings refused to let her story fade. They fought, they spoke out, and they demanded justice until the truth finally surfaced. Her prophetic words, "If anything happens to me, look at Dale," were dismissed while she was alive. In death, they became the cornerstone of justice. Those words now echo as both a warning and a lesson. When victims speak, we must listen. The tragedy of Ann's story lies in the violence that silenced her, but her legacy endures in the courage of her family, the support of her community, and the awareness her case has raised about domestic violence, urging the world not to turn away, but to act. Her story also forces us to confront some difficult questions. How many more women will cry out for help and be ignored? How many families will only find answers after years of agony? How many red flags must be overlooked before change comes? These questions don't just belong to Anne's case, they belong to all of us. Domestic violence is not just a private matter, it is a public crisis. According to the CDC, 1 in 4 women in the United States will experience severe intimate partner violence in their lifetime. Each statistic represents someone's mother, sister, daughter, or friend. Anne's story may feel unique because of its shocking details, but the truth is, it reflects a pattern seen in far too many homes across America and beyond. The responsibility now lies with us. As a society, we must listen when women raise alarms. We must pressure our justice systems to treat early warnings with urgency, and we must ensure that victims are not left to fight alone. Anne's children will carry both the pain of her loss and the strength of her legacy. Her community will forever remember the woman who was stolen from them, and we, as witnesses to her story, must choose whether to let it fade or to let it fuel change. If Anne's story moved you, don't let it end here. Share this video to spread awareness. Comment below with your thoughts, experiences, or words of support for families who are still waiting for justice. And if you believe stories like this must be told, subscribe to the channel so her voice and others like hers will never be silenced again. Ann Warner cannot speak for herself anymore, but together, we can make sure her silence is not in vain.